Hey, folks, good evening, and thanks for joining me on Phantoms and Monsters Radio. I welcome all new listeners and members to the channel, as well as first timers in the chat. So, during my many years as a Fortean researcher and investigator, I've focused on creatures that most people would say belong on the pages of Grimm's fairy tales, Aesop's fables, or maybe an animated film or cartoons. There are also tales of ancient dog headed men who are unique to myth and legend. But in more recent times, there are also accounts of human like canines that are said to live and prosper among us. They're seen in many forms, both biped and quadruped. But the overwhelming question is, what are they and why do they exist? So try to visualize what I'm about to describe to you, and I'll present the reports and incidents in detail and try to answer all your questions in the chat after I'm done talking about these phenomena. But before I go any further, I just want to mention that this channel is made possible by you clicking on the subscribe and like buttons and by you sharing our programming. Now, if you're watching us on YouTube, super chat and super thanks are appreciated. You can click the dollar icon located below the chat box, and other donation links are also shown in the description. Thanks for your consideration. And your comments are always welcome. Tell me which accounts you find interesting in the presentation or suggestions for upcoming shows. I want to again thank our chat moderators, Bernadette, Marla, Thomas, and Mike, as well as Kevin and Mary at ESP Network. Now, if you're in the chat and you do have a question, please use all caps, and I'll try to get to each one of them after the presentation. So, in this first account, the witness states, "Hey, I'm Mike from Sheboygan, Michigan area. This is true what I'm about to describe. On November 24th, 2010, my two friends and I went out at night around midnight. We weren't hunting, but had weapons. We were looking for a spot to set up our blinds for the muzzle loading season when we crossed a field with tons of deer bedding. We came into another field with none whatsoever. Now, we continued through this field and came across some kind of game trail. We decided to venture down this trail and into the woods. We got maybe 300 yards back in it and started hearing heavy breathing and snapping sounds in the thick brush to our right. We thought maybe coyotes, but we got to a corner and were stopped in our tracks. In front of us, maybe 50 yards away, was something blacker than the wood standing on 2 feet and stood between 7 and 7.5 feet. We slowly turned away and backtracked. Now, before we got to the field, the same thing was in front of us again. We turned around for a second and then turned back, but it was gone. Now, when we got into the field, we noticed that there were four or more of these creatures, one on each corner of the field, just standing there. We saw one move halfway behind a tree. Now, at this point, we were freaking out. We made our way through the field and got to the edge, and there was one standing directly in the middle of the trail entering the woods. We hauled butt back home, and the whole way we felt like we were being watched and stalked. Now, we've been out every night since then. We have learned not to use lights because it comes closer than 50 yards. The closest it has been to me was maybe 25 yards or so and was moving closer. Now, at that point, I shot at it. There were five total, and we saw the first night. And after I shot at one, we went out last night, and there were only four, and they seemed more aggressive. And in the field, it seems they tried herding us into a corner. You can believe it or not, but it did happen. Now, I contacted Mike and asked him for a description. He told me you're probably going to think I'm nuts, but they had large wolf heads and were standing on two legs. I told him that I didn't believe he was nuts because look, we've received these type of reports for years now, and these things can get really big, and I'm talking like 9, 10 feet, especially here in Pennsylvania. So yeah, they're out there. So in July 2009, I received the following emails about at least two sightings of a supposed dog man in Baraga County, Upper Peninsula, Michigan. I contacted the witness, who seemed very truthful and credible. So he writes me, last fall, my son and I were driving on US 41 towards Three Lakes in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, where I live. The beast ran across the highway near Tioga Creek. I had not heard this before reading Phantoms and Monsters, but this is exactly what we saw. We are familiar with all the animals living here. Moose regularly cross in front of drivers, so we watch the sides of the roads carefully. Now, we were very puzzled and thought it might be some type of mutant wolf, or could not figure out what we had witnessed. It ran fairly fast, about 50 feet in front of our truck. It was so strange because the front of it was much higher up than the back, larger than a wolf. Very strange to see that was on your website. And this witness name was Rhonda. So I contacted the witness and asked for further details of the sighting, and this is what I received. It did not look exactly like the videos or drawings I saw, but very close. The side view of the animal was almost like an ape shape, with the front legs longer than the back legs, which made it run strangely. It ran like a bear runs, except the back legs were shorter, if you can picture that. The front, from the angle I saw, looked like it must have had a wide chest. Now, the head appeared wolf like, but it was definitely not a wolf. The color was brown and black mixed. The hair seemed medium long like a wolf, and I remember thinking it might have been mange with patches of hair missing. So I was telling my son, who was 13, about what I had found on your site and asked him what he remembered. Now, he gave the same description, how very strange and out of place it was. He said that this spring he saw the same type of thing on the logging road near our house. I do remember him telling me at the time. And it was the same thing. He was riding his dirt bike. We live in an extremely remote area, and it ran across the trail. I know where he's talking about because I pick berries there and do get a weird feeling like something is watching me. Now, a neighbor told me that the area is Bigfoot Central, which I don't know is true or I believe, but after doing further research today, there are a lot of reports of strange creatures in this area that go back many, many years. Who knows what it is, but as long as it's not hurting anything, I hope it just leave us alone, and I'll just leave it alone. Now, I'm very familiar with the wildlife. I do hunt, and I know my tracks. I have not seen any strange tracks, but now I'm really keeping an eye open. Please keep me informed if you get any other reports from my area, which I do. I still keep in contact with Rhonda after all these years. So in April 2009, I received an account from Wisconsin, but with a bit of a twist. The witness states my girlfriend and I went out to feed deer for the hunting opener in November 22nd, 2008. We were in the Megan National Forest in northern Wisconsin. It was November 21st, 2008, and the time was 12:10 a.m. It was totally dark out, and light snow was falling with an accumulation of about an inch covering the roads. The temperature was 11 degrees Fahrenheit, and the wind was blowing from the northwest with a wind chill of 0. We made a U turn to the left onto an unfinished ATV trail in one of our 4x4 pickups heading towards last year's feed pile. Now, I got to the bottom of the hill and backed in and parked. I got out my pistol and loaded it. I then put it in my holster. I grabbed my headlight with 3 LED light bulbs and secured it on my head. I handed her a shaker LED flashlight and proceeded to the back of my truck where I had a 5-gallon bucket with just under 2 gallons of corn and 3 apples in it strapped down with 2 of my ATV straps. I put the tailgate down, unstrapped the bucket, and put the tailgate back up. I walked around my side and then in front of the truck to her passenger's side as she was putting her mittens on. We both started to walk together. Now she was just behind and to the right side when we both noticed a a fresh set of tracks in the snow heading downwind of us in the same direction we were walking. Now at first it was not the size that caught my attention. It was what in the God's creation made these tracks. Immediately my skin crawled and I looked around to see if what we had just come up on was in sight. I glanced back down in disbelief at the tracks. I was in a slight stage of shock as I looked at her. She looked at me, and we both looked down at 4 well formed footprints of some kind of scary tracks that neither of us had ever seen before. I sized my shoe beside one of the tracks, and I realized it was about 3 inches longer than my shoe, and I wear a 12-inch heel to toe. It was about 1 inch wider than my shoe as well, which measures about 4 inches at its widest. Whatever we witnessed, the footprints of had 2 pointed talons on the ends of its foot that are isometrically the same with the rectangular shaped heel. The talons joined on the outside and at the same length in between the talons on each foot. They are 15 inches long and 5 inches wide with 64-inch strides. Now, I have a 36-inch stride at 5'10" tall to give an idea of the possible size of this creature running or not. We don't know. Now, I believe we just missed seeing what caused those tracks, and whatever made those tracks was still in the area and possibly watching us. And my girl told me to load my pistol and keep it out. I didn't argue. At first, she wanted to leave right away, but the sheer adrenaline and interest of what caused the tracks, I believe, is what kept us there. So I said, okay, let's get out of here. But again, interest keeps us there looking at the tracks. My fear slightly subsided enough to think about the upcoming deer opener, and I decided I have the pistol and we'll be okay. Well, I started to walk the same way the tracks went up on the hill, and when I stopped, I looked back at her while she was still staring down at the prints. I said, "Come on, let's get this over with." She called up to me, and we walked together. And she said to me, "If this thing gets a hold of me, put a bolt in my head." I thought about what I thought about that as we kept walking. We went deep into the woods down a steep hill where I knew the feed pile was from last year. We got to where I wanted the pile to be. I took the lid off the bucket, dumped the corn and the apples out, stepped on the apples. I snapped the lid back on the bucket and said, "Let's go." So we started to climb the hill when I realized we were off track and had to walk left to reach the trail to get back to the truck. I started to think that this was the scariest thing I'd ever encountered, and I felt panic overcoming me. I knew where I was, and finally we got back on the trail and walked down to where we could see the tracks of this creature again. We both stared at them as we walked, and when we got back to the truck just 20 yards from the prints, she got in and closed her door. I went behind the truck, opened the tailgate, restrapped the bucket down, and closed the tailgate. I got to my side of the truck and took the clip out of my gun and got in. I pulled my headlight off my head as we drove away. Then I said, "I'm not coming back here." And she agreed. We were both scared and couldn't believe had just happened. Now, I later thought back to a month earlier and about 1 mile from where we had seen the tracks. A friend and I had been camping. I went to bed early and fell into a deep sleep. Now, I woke up to the sound of my friend walking behind the tent. My friend walked behind the tent, and our first reply was, "What are you doing back there?" I woke up a little more and realized my friend was sleeping, breathing kind of loud next to me. I sat up against my gear and grabbed my pistol and flashlight and sat there cold and scared in the dark. I woke my friend up and told him what I was hearing, and he said, "It's probably a deer or something." The temperature was around 26 degrees Fahrenheit. I looked out the flaps of the tent and could see the fire had died down, and it was pitch black out there. I stood up and told my friend that I was going to the truck to warm up and get some sleep. I asked him if he wanted me to leave him the pistol, and he said, "No, I'll be all right." I left the tent and walked to my truck about 80 yards away and started it up to get warm. I turned my lights on a few different times to see if what had walked by my tent was in sight. And I didn't see anything. I turned my truck off and fell asleep. Now, whatever walked by the tent was bipedal. It made two steps into my sound range and out again. I did not hear any other noise from whoever or whatever had walked by. I looked around the next morning for footprints, but leaves covered the ground and I didn't detect anything. A little more than 2 years earlier, during the summer, I was at the same location riding my ATV alone. I stopped and got off, walked down to the nearby lake, and looking at the water and how clear it was when I hear up on the hill a huge tree snap and hit the ground with a big thump, along with the branches snapping on the other trees. I got back to my ATV quickly at the time, thinking that a bear was up there and I was not sticking around to find out. So 2 months later, that same summer, I returned to this spot again, riding my ATV. I shut off the wheeler and stood around close, thinking about the last time I was there and was scared off by something. I was there about 5 minutes when all of a sudden I could hear branches snapping off trees as whatever was breaking them was coming down the hill closer to where I was. I got on my wheeler, never to return until my friend and I camped there a little over 2 years later in October. My first two experiences, possibly with this unknown creature while I was alone, made me think it was possibly a bear. The trouble with this theory is that I've come up on a bear and dozens or so times, and every time the bear is running as fast as it can in the other direction. And whatever was making the tree sound was not running anywhere. Now that we witnessed this creature's footprints, I put the pieces together and realized this creature's living in this area and has probably been there for a long time. I have learned it means us no harm, yet it only makes sounds when I'm alone. It's always downwind of me, and it's out in the day or the night, and I can see well in the dark, and it can see well in the dark. It uses the wind to its advantage every chance it gets. It can hear and smell well. It waits until we're vulnerable to approach us when two of us are together. Now, I've ridden 4,000 miles in this forest on my Grizzly ATV through deep, desolate, thick wooded swamp and lake areas and have now proved to myself that this undocumented creature is out there. I know where this creature is living and plan on an expedition to prove his existence. Now, I want to document this creature because I feel everyone that enters the forest has a right to know that it's there and for other various reasons. I'm open to any that would like to comment or ask questions in discussing my encounters with this creature. Um, Now that was what 15 years ago. I haven't heard back from the witness, so I don't know what had happened. Though since that time, we have had a lot more of these cryptid canine sightings in Wisconsin, especially in north part of Wisconsin. Now, the Bray Road Beast is known to be in southern Wisconsin, but of course we've as time years have gone by, the whole state of Wisconsin has had a lot of different sightings. So I don't know why he never got back to me, but I'm not going to speculate. I want to thank Win Nyes for the $20 donation. Very much appreciated. Now, an Arkansas man encounters a wolf like upright canine while driving on I 165 late at night. He was in the vicinity of Stuttgart. Now, he states, and this is my encounter with what I believe to be a dog man. This happened in July. I was working at a very big factory in Stuttgart, Arkansas, in pretty much the east central part of the state. Now, one night I got off of work around 8 p.m. I went to one of my coworkers' houses and proceeded to indulge in plenty of beer. But it was well after midnight when I left his house to make the half-hour drive to my house. I was on the main highway that connects Stuttgart to England and was cruising around 65 mile an hour and had no oncoming traffic as everyone is either heading the same way as me or is already turned off elsewhere. I had a car that had a light bar on the front bumper. I had my light bar on and it shined up the road a good way. I went around a curve and noticed something dark off to the passenger side of the road in a ditch next to the rice field, walking the same way as I was heading. As I got closer to the object, I could tell it was covered in black fur and was walking on two legs. As I got close enough to see the complete look of the creature, it turned and looked at me. It felt like it peered into my soul. I could tell it had a wolf-like head with a muscular built body. I don't know if it was the alcohol I drank that made me see what I saw, but I didn't stop. I know I probably wasn't seeing stuff because a car that was behind me slammed its brakes and backed up to get an angle of the field with its headlights. I kept driving and drove the rest of the way home doing over 100 mile an hour. I made it home too, and I promptly ran into the house and slept with my gun in my lap. That night, I kept hearing things walking around the outside of my house, and my bulldog would cower in his kennel and would not get out. I have not drunk more than 3 beers any single sitting since. Now, I will tell you, I had mentioned, especially to the team members on Fams and Monsters Fortean Research, that we are doing investigations down in Alabama um, for cryptid canines. Been doing that for about 3 years, and we have gathered a lot of evidence. And in fact, there's some new things going on down there, and I plan on talking about that at a later date. But two of our investigators, Brennan and Charles, are down there. They live around the Birmingham area. So, but there has been a lot of cryptid canine activity in Alabama. And as far as Arkansas, I don't hear a whole lot in Arkansas, but I have heard some. Now, this next witness states, "Hi, I was born and raised in North New Jersey. My Boyfriend and close friends love to explore mysterious locations throughout the state. One day, I found an exciting area. It's located in Trent, New Jersey. It's an abandoned child orphanage and it is also used to operate as an insane asylum. Late at night, maybe around 10 p.m., we were following the GPS to the location and hoping not to run into police or have to deal with being run off. We wanted to get inside the buildings. It was known when open as the Trenton Psychiatric Hospital. As we drove past the side of the actual orphanage, my mind was not on finding cryptids or any creatures, but as we were scoping out the place to see if there was any security. Suddenly, out of absolutely nowhere, I saw this dark, blacker than black, what I would describe as a canine shaped body. But when I saw it, the thing was in the middle of jumping out of view next to the side of the road. All I was able to fully see was the lower half of this thing, from mid torso to the tail. As it leaps out to my sight, it scared the crap out of me. What stuck out in my mind was the tail. This thing had a tail like a fox's tail. It was bushy and large. But New Jersey doesn't have foxes, and certainly not black foxes. This animal was more massive than a large dog and much larger than a coyote. Like I said, I was not out this evening with this in mind. I was out to ghost hunt. I turned to my boyfriend who was driving and asked if he had seen what I saw. He didn't, which makes sense because this thing was on my side of the car and it was dark. I never saw the face or the upper half. It leaped from the side of the road into the brush next to the building. It was on all fours, but New Jersey doesn't have wolves or foxes or anything that fits what I saw. And I Googled all native animals in New Jersey and nothing was like what I saw. If I witnessed this thing in another more rural state, I'd have an open mind, but New Jersey just doesn't have any native animals with that description. I've never seen a dog man or even a Bigfoot, but I have no doubt that they exist. But I sometimes wonder if that's what I saw, some kind of dog man or canine creature. I know it wasn't seeing things. It was blacker than the blackness of the night. It scared the bejesus out of me too. Again, this was in Trent, New Jersey around 10 or 11 p.m. back in 2019. Now, since that time, since I received this, and I received this about a year or so ago, we've had quite a few cryptid canine sightings in New Jersey, especially in the Pine Barrens area. And I've talked about those. I don't know what people are seeing, but from the descriptions that we're getting, it definitely seems like it's cryptid canine. And this whole cryptid canine phenomena is really spreading throughout, especially the eastern part of the United States. So, and even in urban areas. Now, the next witness states, as a young child, my sweet old great great granny Lee from Homer, Louisiana, used to tell me about the Wolfman of Marshall, Texas. She said that she had seen the beast herself as it attacked a neighbor's pig. She swore on the old family Bible that what she saw was not a man nor a known beast. She said it was a man wolf and could be nothing more than that. This beast man wolf, my dear old Granny Lee often described as people seeing what was a half human, half wolf. It had been noted and told that they are over 6 feet tall when they stand. They have large yellow orange eyes, long white sharp teeth, and a blunt long snout. Its face is always not quite a man's, but not quite a wolf's. Though some report they're covered with full coat of hair, and others tell of the coat being sparse or patchy. Though reports sometimes differ, the common factors are that the werewolf's face were always seemingly flat, blunt, and yet pointed and very grotesquely long. Now, the man wolf was not so long ago, was often encountered along Stagecoach Road. This, of course, is one of the most haunted hotspots in all of Marshall. Others say it was Dead Woman's Road or Sedbury Street, as is now known. This werebeast animal, or some called a dogman, was known for slaying a sheep or a cow where it stood in the blink of an eye. They say the thousands of chickens they kill could feed the whole state of Texas for a year. And don't forget the many stories of them killing possibly a man, woman, or child or two for good measure. The old stories around here you will hear most often are of poor old Miss Ethel Briggs. She was a lonely widow whose husband and young son were reportedly outright killed by this man wolf. Ethel's husband used to raise all the normal things it took to survive the daily life of the time. Then one day, he found that something had broken into the many chicken pens and killed his livestock and carried them away. He then found chewed up pieces showing real signs that they were being killed and eaten. He set out to trap and kill what he thought was a large coyote or mountain lion. Now, Ethel's husband knew what he had to do. So he went out that night and, as the story goes, never returned. They found his foot and the toes were chewed off at that next morning, lying in the front door, and found his left arm missing 3 fingers and half a thumb near the old barn. His head was by the creek, missing his nose, ears, and tongue. And of course, his lips were chewed off, and the area of the cheeks showed deep, large punctures and tooth gouge marks. And the very next night, her youngest son was taken before her eyes. He was the red-headed one who set off looking with his mother for the rest of his dad chewed up remains to bury on that cold February day. That very next morning, he was found, at least a part of his upper torso, just near 5 miles away. The sheriff was called in to come and investigate the death. Now, poor Miss Ethel said that she had seen the beast when the town sheriff came to call, and that she had buried only the 3 large pieces of her husband's carcass behind the great field he used to till. She went on to say that she and her 4 other kids had found them scattered around the property. She said that she saw was not that of a man or just a mangy rabies infected dog. It was more than just very large. It walked like a man with a strange apparent slight limp and jake leg. She also noted that it ran off on all fours with her husband's left leg in its mouth. Now, this next witness states, when I lived in West Texas, I had an experience with what I always had called a werewolf. I was in college at the time and driving home around 11 p.m. from my job. There was a huge cattle field behind the development where I lived. And I sometimes preferred going to the back way home because it was more scenic. I don't even recall if there was a full moon. I saw what looked like a cow by the fence and decided to scare it. I pulled over and started laying on my horn. Now, I don't remember if I heard anything. I just remember what I saw. That thing got up. It had to be over 7 foot tall. And I sat there staring at this thing, and it was staring at me before it took off running. I sped home, and I remember how terrified I was to get out of my car. I didn't have a garage clicker, and I knew it would take me forever to unlock the door. Well, it hadn't followed me, so I assumed it was okay. I don't remember how long it was after the incident, but I was running on my usual trail that snaked around the front of the development, and there was a huge cow leg lying in the dirt. Clearly, way too big to be related to coyotes or another animal. I always assume anything that could kill and dismember a cow would have to be much larger. That was the last time I experienced something that I could relate to. We ended up moving not long after, but I still think about it. Now, this next witness states, I've always had weird experiences, be it ghosts or strange animals. It just always seems to follow my family and me. We recently moved into an old farmhouse just off the main road near Guntersville, Alabama. The house was 88 acres of land with only 4 people, including us, that live on and near the land. Now, when we first moved in, nothing abnormal happened. It was just a small house that seemed like a new start for all of us. After a month of living there, we started hearing strange noises outside at night, but nothing very serious. One night, we decided to have a fire and drink some beer. Well, a few other guys that were there that night decided to do some night fishing. Now, while fishing in the pond that was maybe a mile into the woods, we started hearing screaming. We just think that it was one of the girls back at the house, so we head back. But on our way back, we start noticing that there are no more sounds. No sounds of nature, no birds, crickets, nothing. So we stop to listen. As we do this, we hear the sounds of chains rushing towards us. As it gets maybe 15 feet from us, I point a gun at where I think the sound is coming from and fire a shot at the ground a couple of inches from it. After a minute passes, the chain sounds rush towards the house. Nothing happened after that until we went inside and started going to bed. We all hear a female scream again, but behind it, there is a deep, distorted laugh. After that, nothing happened. But 3 weeks later, my dad and I went fishing out at the impound late in the afternoon. As it inches closer to dusk, we noticed three pale white animals on the opposite side of the pond. But as soon as we notice the animals, they run. But instead of running on all fours like a normal animal, they all jump up on their hind legs and jump 8 feet into the air and hop from tree to tree. Now, as we see this, we decide to head back home. But on the way back, we hear the trees start rustling, and it keeps getting closer and closer until we get to the house and lock the doors. I decide to set cams in the woods and around the house. Now, at first, I don't get anything, just deer and coyote. But one night, a camera close to the house is moved for an hour and then back. Nothing came of that until one night recently. After a long day of working, I decided to play a video game with a few friends. At about 11 p.m. at night, I heard two taps, but I ignored it, thinking it was the game. It continued to 2 a.m. Periodically, every 5 minutes, two consecutive taps would happen. I finally took off my headphones and I heard it on my window. Now, when I look, I see orange eyes 7 feet off the ground. After 2 minutes of staring at each other, it moved closer to the window and smiled at me with blood-stained daggers for teeth. Its face looked like a pale wolf-like face with some decay along the sides of its head and neck. After doing this, it backs away and then leaves. Now, every night something happens. Like tonight, as I'm writing this, it rushed onto the porch and clawed the door. As I'm doing this, it is belling out a laugh that almost sounds like a deranged madman crossed with a hyena. At this point, I'm not sure what to think. Are we being hunted? Now, like I said before, this is out of Alabama. I've recently received a variety of harrowing cryptid wolves or upright canine encounters around the Birmingham and North Alabama area. And there are, like I said, besides the people who are investigating with me, there are other people who have contacted me in North Alabama, especially up in the Huntsville area, of these cryptid canines. So that's the last account, folks. If you have any questions, I'll see if I can answer them. All caps, please. Apparently, we're disconnected. I'm going to have to pull up the questions. Yeah. Okay. Kevin says they're all right now. So go ahead and put your questions up and we'll see what we can do. Sir Wolf. Hi, Lon. Have you considered running your cases through AI? Might find interesting correlations, astrological and time patterns, cycles, weather, unusual anomalies. We have tried a few, and not that I absolutely trust AI at this point, but I think as time goes on, we'll probably be able to use it more effectively. but at this point, I'm a little wary of it. I want to thank Mortal Clown for their donation. Thank you. The Dachshund Master. Have you ever seen a police report from a dogman encounter? An actual report? No, I haven't. Uh, but who knows? I mean, I haven't had any. And that in a way it doesn't surprise me because a lot of people wouldn't even bother police when they saw something like this. Robo 1776. You Lon, any ideas on the canine origins? And thanks for the donation as well. Um, I don't know. This is something that Butch and I just had discussed for years and years. What possible origins are where these things are coming from? Now we've got reports back into the 1800s, especially around here in Pennsylvania. Uh, there have been lumbermen and miners who have dealt with these things. And I have talked about a few of those over the years, especially the miners. But origin, no, we really don't have an origin. Now, what do I think? I don't think they're indigenous beings. Like with other cryptids, and my thoughts on those, I think they may very well be interdimensional or supernatural. CS, thanks for your donation. Very much appreciated. Any other questions, folks? Mortal Clown says that she knows someone who saw a dog man in Alabama. Well, I'm going to have to talk to you. You got to tell me about it when we talk next time. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Docs. Dagnammit. Nahani National Park has a large wolf that bites people's heads off. 40 people missing there. I have heard Nahani and I have heard a few of these, but I don't know about 40 people going missing there. I don't know any details about that. Anna Boyle, Lon, do you like H.P. Lovecraft's works? Absolutely. Are there photos? Asked Joanne. Um, Occasionally one will show up. There have been a few. There has been one in particular here in Maryland, down in Maryland when I lived down there, of a sighting that was documented back in the 70s, and they did have a photograph. Is it authentic? I have no idea, but I have seen a few other. I have seen a few photographs of these things. Uh, One cell Jill. Any news on David Eckhart these days? Uh, Not really. And I be honest, I really can't talk about it. It's a private matter with David, but David's still around. I will tell you that they didn't abduct him and take him. He's still around the area. Dachshund Master. Okay, let's see. Patsy Trigg. Have you any reports from Australia? Not a cryptid canines. No, I don't. I can't remember any anyway. But no, I don't. I don't think there have been. Any Dogman sightings in Washington State? There have been a few, Mike. So, but we don't get many from up there. Even up into BC, we don't get many Dogman reports in that area. Leckham, the spicy lizard. Hi, Lon. Great show. With sightings on the rise, do you think we'll hear more strange cases like Sasquatch, mind speak, seen in dreams, supposed repeated communication, dog man with wings, scary? At this point, nothing would surprise me as far as any variations of these things. And we do get more reports as time goes on. Um, hopefully, hopefully we'll get some more and keep getting them. Here in Pennsylvania, South Central Pennsylvania, we have had sightings over the years, and but Maryland and Pennsylvania are pretty well known for cryptid canine sightings, even historically. But we have had a few, and I have talked about many of those cases that we have investigated. Anything else, folks? Okay. Well, thank you all for watching and chatting. If you donate, it's truly appreciated. And your support is what makes all this possible. Please like, subscribe, and share. And if you have a sighting encounter report that you'd like to be considered for the Families and Monsters blog or personal report show, please send it to me at Lon Strickler at familiesandmonsters.com. So until we meet again, stay healthy and safe. Good night, and I'll talk to you next Friday night.